But Lord, we just continue to just glorify and we ask that you will guide this evening's proceedings. So Lord, we thank you for another day and we pray that even after this session is finished, that you'll take each and every one of us home safely to our destinations. In Jesus' name I pray and we thank you and we give you all honor and glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, everyone. Well, I'd like to invite Dr. Smith to do the introductions.
All right, good evening, everyone. All right, so the Pharmaceutical Society of Jamaica, a 95-year-old organization that was established from 1928. And it is an organization that represents pharmacists in this country. And what we like to highlight also is that it is one of the oldest professional associations in this country. Now, in the 1970s, the Pharmaceutical Society thought that it was important to establish a national pharmacy week, one that would bring to the public's attention what pharmacists do. So what we're doing this week is pretty much just carrying on that tradition, carrying on that work that was started by our colleagues years ago. So this week, from the 19th of November until the 25th of November, the Pharmaceutical Society of Jamaica celebrates its National Pharmacy Week. Now, it started, just to give you a quick review of what has been happening, it started on Sunday with our church service right across the island. We had different groups of pharmacists and pharmacy technicians and other pharmacy stakeholders that has been visiting different churches. Later on Sunday, we had the Dr. Grace Allen Young Memorial Lecture, right? And this is, Dr. Grace Allen Young is a pharmacist extraordinaire, a civil servant, one that has been a pioneer in the field of pharmacy in Jamaica. And one of the things is, as pharmacists, we wanted to recognize our work and our legacy. And that is why the memorial lecture is done every year. This year was the 11th installment. And I must say that it was a wonderful occasion. Now, the focus for this year was on diabetes. All right, so that is what happened on Sunday. On Monday, yesterday, we had the official opening ceremony that was done at the University Hospital of the West Indies. And of course, our keynote speaker was Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness. And in his keynote address, he spoke to the work and the impact that pharmacists have been having in this country, not just on the individual patients that we serve, but on healthcare development, healthcare policies, and just making that impact on the nation. So today, we're here, and this is our public forum. And the public forum has been a staple in the Pharmacy Week lineup. And it is a situation in which we invite the public to just come and talk to pharmacists up close and personal. So all of these presentations that you see advertised will be done, well, two of them will be done by pharmacists, and then we have Dr. Kazara, name keeps slipping me every time, will be doing something. So you see the topics, sleep deprivation. How many, all right, let me put it this way. When you know that your friends and your colleagues are not sleeping, is when you get up 5 o'clock in the morning and you check your WhatsApp. And you see all of those groups that you have on WhatsApp. And you see somebody send something in 1:45, somebody send something in 2 o'clock, somebody respond at 3:15. And you wonder, these people don't sleep. So we're looking at sleep deprivation, right? Next topic, we'll be looking at healthy eating and a budget. So we have the lineup for you this evening, right? We complain every time we see the supermarket bill. Healthy eating on a budget. And then, of course, the mental health issues. We cannot downplay that globally, 1 in 5. So I want you to look around and count the next 4 persons beside you. Look around and count the next 4 persons beside you. And global statistics is saying that 1 in 5 person has a mental health illness. So it's serious. I think for Jamaica it is 1 in 8, but globally it's 1 in 5. So we have something lined up for you this evening, and we just want to welcome you. Just sit down and want to sponge up the information that will be presented. All right? Everybody ready for it? All right, so we want to introduce at this point our keynote speaker for this evening, a gentleman that has been making an impact in this country through his leadership of the National Health Fund. Everybody know what the National Health Fund is? Everybody is a member. Anybody is a member of the National Health Fund? Anybody benefit from the National Health Fund? Awesome. So we have the man that sits at the realm, the top, the pinnacle. All right, so we have the award-winning CEO of the National Health Fund, none other than Mr. Everton Anderson. So right at this time, I'm going to ask him to stand. We'll ask you to put your hands together, because it's not every day that you see a man of this caliber so close. So, welcome, sir. Microphone is yours.
Madam Chair, President Tyrone Smith, other distinguished pharmacists, I see Dr. Ernestine Watson, I see Michelle Youngbrown of the NHF, pharmacists across Jamaica, members of the audience, good evening. It's my pleasure to be here this evening, and let me start by saying Happy Pharmacy Week. Many persons don't understand the work that pharmacists do and how important pharmacists are to the healthcare system. I certainly do. We at the NHF were involved in pharmacy in so many different ways. But I must first, before getting into that, recognize the work of the PSG. Well, for any institution to survive 95 years, you must be doing something right. So let me commend the PSG for the work that you continue to do in Jamaica. And you're going to hit the century. You can't be at 95 runs and then lose your wicket. So you have to get the other 5. I think over the years, the interaction, the partnership with PSG has really been very valuable for the NHF. And we commend you, and we will continue to support you, because we have to work as partners as we pursue better health for Jamaica. I spoke earlier to say NHF is involved, but we're deeply involved. I want to get to probably the genesis. The NHF started out in 2003, 20 years ago. And the intent at the time was to pursue a national health insurance program following decades of discussion around a proper health financing scheme. And it was decided to start the program by covering essential medicines. And when I look at the historical documents in the fund, what it says is that pharmacies were reluctant to sign up to a government program. So the initial sign-up was not a lot. Mr. De La Pena is not here, but he was one of the early ones who came on. Now, 20 years later, we have moved from 3 or 4 pharmacy providers to 462 pharmacy providers. So we're embedded, we're deep in pharmacy. And with these providers, last year we processed, I think, 2.4 million claims and paid out 6.5 billion in subsidies to our 462 pharmacy providers. The NHF is deep into pharmacy and committed to Jamaicans getting excellent pharmaceutical care. So I want to thank all 462 for their partnership, because for our active beneficiaries, I don't believe we've received even one complaint that they're not able to regularly receive their drugs. I notice the word regularly, because from time to time, items will be short globally, and you may not get an item or so. But generally, access to medication is strong through our private pharmacies. Now, to take it a little further, in 2011, Health Corporation Limited was wound up, and the NHF took that over. And what it meant is that the NHF then would buy all essential medicines for the public health system. This is an awesome task. This is really procuring medicines valued at about $9 billion on an annual basis. A global tender that sometimes takes us 8 to 9 months from start of the tender process to finishing that. And we have a huge ISO certified warehouse where we store those goods with emergency supplies. If you have a hurricane or any major issue, this is where the country will get all the essential items from. So we're deep into pharmacy. And that warehouse is actually a pharmacy. So you have to have a pharmacy to actually have that facility registered. The third aspect of the fund I'd like to highlight this evening is the drug-serve pharmacies that provide essential medicines at the point of care for persons in the public health system. And this came about because I think about 10 years ago, access to medicines for persons accessing hospitals and health centers was very limited. So the NHF was mandated to take over this service, and we've had major success in that, increasing the number of prescriptions filled and providing what I would say is a very credible service to the poor and the vulnerable. And that we're very proud of. And I want to congratulate our own pharmacy team, including Dr. Young Brown, who helped us to achieve quite a bit in getting to that level of access. The key thing, though, is that for us, there's no public and there's no private. There's just pharmacy. So for those who want to divide and do all that sort of thing, there's no public, there's no private, there's just pharmacy. And I want to reiterate that, because even in your theme this evening, Dr. Smith, I see the word unified. And that's how we feel, because I personally, even though we manage public pharmacies, I don't remember if I've ever filled a prescription at our own drug service. I go to Fontana, I go to Ernestine Watson's pharmacy, where the banana bread is very good. The bread pudding is very good. And in Mobile, I think it's Super Value. In Overton, many pharmacies. And the message during this week is that at the end of the day, it's really the patient that matters. And if we forget that, we'll be losing the essence of pharmacy. We would be losing the essence of pharmacy. We have to find a way to work together, public and private, to make our patients not only get better, but feel better. And the feel better part has to do with the level and quality of service, how we talk to them. And the NHF recently, at the Service Awards, we won 4 of 8 awards for customer service and service excellence. And it's that type of approach that we have to include, not only in public, but in private. Our patients deserve it. The closing point I'd want to make is that the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And I'm interpreting the mental and social to mean that we have to get along in the industry. We will always have differences of opinion, but what we should never, never, never lack is respect for each other, courtesy towards each other, and that burning desire to serve our patients. So as we celebrate Pharmacy Week, I'm encouraging all pharmacists, all technicians, everyone who works in a pharmacy, all distributing companies in pharmacy, all drug serves, all 460 private pharmacies to commit to working together to achieve that state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Happy Pharmacy Week, and we at the NHF will continue to play our role in making pharmacy great. And I'm not gonna say like Mr. Trump, great again, because pharmacy has been great for years. Congratulations and have a blessed week. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. How are we doing this evening? Boy, trust me, we're few in numbers, but even though we're few in numbers, we're going to make the best of the situation. And I must say to you that we are extremely grateful for Mr. Anderson. It's the middle of the week. Yes, he has taken the time out to be here in our presence. And I say few in number, but few in numbers, we can be very potent. Meaning, whatever it is that we learn today, we take it and we share with family members, co-workers, friends, and so forth. Mr. Anderson, truly, we're appreciative of the fact that you're here. We're a little behind time and you're still here with us, so we truly appreciate this. We have a spot prize, so I hope you are listening, because right after Mr. Anderson, we'll be asking our first question, okay? Mr. Anderson, it's truly a pleasure. I know you probably have to leave us now, but we're grateful. Thank you so much. Yes. All right, so before Mr. Anderson even exit the building, let us see how much of us were paying attention. So I'm sure Dr. Smith gave an excellent announcement or presentation or introduction of who he is. So who is Mr. Everton Anderson? What is NHF? Awesome. Thank you so much. So Vanessa will hand out the first prize. These prizes are nice, guys, so we need to listen, pay attention, and I'm sure we will be taking home something nice for those of us who, of course, participate. Now, our next presenter, I am very, very happy to be introducing her. I mean, Dr. Ernestine Watson has been a true veteran in the pharmacy industry. Comes from what we say teaching, we would say the fancy word of academia, into mentorship of young pharmacists, into the space of entrepreneurship as business owner. So she is a clinical pharmacist by profession. She is a pharmacy owner, as I would have said. She lectures at the University of Technology and perhaps adjunct at UWI as well. And adjunct at UWI, she teaches both on the undergrad and postgraduate program for pharmacy students here in Jamaica. And outside of that big umbrella of career responsibility, she is an awesome mother, excellent mother, and an exceptional wife, right? She is also, how could I forget that part? She's also a grandmother, of course, and I'm sure she's pretty proud of that, right? She's highly motivated, committed, and a leader who is creative, focused, and driven. We're looking at over 30 years of experience. So please help me welcome Dr. Ernestine Watson. She will be sharing on sleep deprivation and its impact. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're not sleeping on me because I'll be waking you up. All right. So this evening, we'll be talking about, as we have heard, what is the impact of sleep deprivation. We want to be, by the time you leave here, okay, so I'm a teacher, all right? So I'm going to be inviting you to answer questions, so pay attention. What is sleep deprivation? Can you tell the difference between sleep deprivation and insomnia? Can you list the effects that sleep, lack of sleep, which is sleep deprivation, has on the body? And how do we prevent and how do we treat? So those are the areas that we are going to be looking at. So as way of introduction, can anyone tell me some common symptoms of sleep deprivation? I know it should be up. Next slide. It should be coming in the next slide. Okay, right? Anybody experience those? Fatigue, mood changes. I think we are having a lot of sleep deprivation in Jamaica because some of that road rage, there must be a reason for it. And for our teenagers and those of us who study, and those of us who are a little up in age, not me, of course, I'm young, but for those who are up in age, we tend not to remember, and probably we can't concentrate. But there are some bad aspects, some really bad aspects, including paranoia and persons even hallucinating. But if we look at the picture of the entire body, we can see the different parts of the body that sleep deprivation affects. So it's not so clear there, but I'll tell you, the brain, right? When the brain is affected, the concentration, your ability to concentrate, your memory, well, we spoke about the mood changes, but not just the anger, but the anxiety and the instability. The mood changes are so swift. But then we have risk for chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension. But I want to whisper something this evening. You see this thing called obesity? A lot of it is connected with our lack of sleep. So some persons, they are trying very hard to lose weight, and what they find is that the weight is not going. And then when you check the history of sleep, they sleep in sometimes 4 to 5 hours. And I know that excuse may be for some of our students, but also some of us who work very hard. So obesity, and for the men and women too, the lack of sex drive can be affected. Right? So we have to be careful. So what is sleep deprivation? The simplest thing you can say is when you're not getting enough sleep, right? It may be planned or it may be as a result of other conditions. Some chronic diseases, if you have a lot of pain, cancer patients, patients with stress situations, prevent you from sleeping. So that happens. Now, if the sleep deprivation could be for a short period or it could be for a long period. If it's a long period, then it goes into the chronic stage, and that can lead to long-term effects that we don't want. So what makes us sleep? If we go down some slides, we'll see sleep, actually what happens is that it builds up throughout the day. So once you're awake, that process of getting back to the body to the state of sleep starts. It's a cycle, right? And there's a particular compound in the body, the adenosine, and that, once you awake, it builds up, and it usually will reach a high or a peak in the evening. Now, when you go through sleep, if you allow your body to sleep, that adenosine is broken down. So in the morning now, the levels are low, and then you can start the process all over again. But there are also some hormones, and hormones can affect. So the first one we want to talk about is the melatonin. If we look at melatonin, what is melatonin? It's a hormone that is produced by the body, and in the opposite to the adenosine, what is happening? Melatonin buildup starts like from in the evening. So once it starts to get dark, right, starting from about 9, 10 o'clock, melatonin would increase, and it peaks like about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, if the amount of melatonin is affected and not be able to produce in the blood, then your ability to sleep would be affected. And I know at the pharmacies, you can go into the pharmacies and there's a product called melatonin, but that is not exactly what we are talking about. Melatonin is produced naturally by the body. So if the levels of melatonin in the body is low, and if we do things, so for example, like teenagers, the cell phone, the laptop, the social media, and I heard Dr. Smith talk about it earlier on, when the WhatsApp groups messages coming in 2, 3, 4 every hour of the night. That is a major problem, especially for our young persons, because young persons, as we will see in a few slides down, need a specific amount of time in order for the body to function properly. The other hormone we see, can you go back? The other hormone is the cortisol. And cortisol is also produced naturally in the body. Cortisol is produced early in the morning. So you have your melatonin being produced from about dark and peaks at about 2, 3 o'clock. And then in the early morning, the cortisol is available. Now, as the sun rises, the body releases that cortisol and you awake. You should. You should awake, okay? And this cortisol, this hormone, is preparing the body to awake. So what we have the adenosine, which is being built up once we get up, right? And that, when we fall asleep, it's going to be high at night, we fall asleep, the body breaks it down. Then you have your melatonin and your cortisol. So it's an intercycle, right? This is what we call the body's clock. But this clock, the rhythm changes. So for younger persons, right, a young child will fall asleep early and sleep most of the day, the newborn, whereas the teenager, which seems to be the group that's the group who seem to require the least amount of sleep because of their activities. Not that their body requires it, but because of the activities, they are always going. And they would be affected by the drop in the melatonin that occurs. So if we look at this chart, it shows you the average daily amount of sleep that is required for the individuals. And I see some very interesting figures here. So the newborns should be sleeping between 14 to 17 hours. Any mothers in here? Put up your hands. Can you tell me if the newborn sleeps that amount of time? No. And then the infant between 4 to 12 months, usually 12 to 16 hours. The young children, about 14 hours. School-age children, between 6 to 12, they should be sleeping 9 to 12 hours. Well, I can tell you for a fact, my granddaughter, if you allow her, she will not go to bed until 1, 2 o'clock because she thinks she's missing something. Everybody in the house sleeping, and she is sitting up in the bed because they send her to bed. So she sits up in the bed to see how long she can fight the sleep. And then your teenagers. Well, we know how it goes with the teenagers. Sleep and them don't work out. And of course, your adults, anyone over 18, we should be sleeping between 7 to 9 hours. How does that go? Okay. Yeah, 7 to 9 hours. So for the last 2 years, I have been trying it because I was one of those who found that weight loss was a problem. So I decided that I would do some investigations. And that's one of the things that I learned, that if you don't sleep enough, you can exercise, you can do everything else, and that weight may not go. So I've been pushing to sleep at least 7 hours most nights, and it's the hardest thing. But I think it works because I have. So next slide, we see, if we look at it graphically, we see the distribution of what is happening with the sleep patterns for persons. Then, so just summarizing the symptoms that we spoke about with respect to sleep deprivation, there are some common symptoms. So you find that the person will fall asleep, you have daytime sleepiness, you have your fatigue, irritability, trouble thinking, headaches, and some persons complain about that. You know, they lose sleep and they are terror. Go to bed. Don't speak to me when I don't have enough sleep. And even the ability to respond, and that's why driving can be such a problem. But then there are some other symptoms that are more severe, and that can lead to persons falling asleep at random times, right? Uncontrollable eye movements, trouble speaking clearly, so you might be here talking and suddenly the person catch themselves saying something that they don't understand. They don't understand, so you can imagine what the person they are speaking to. And of course, you have your risk for doing crazy things, you know, the hallucinations, etc. So it says actually, the next slide says that for 24 hours, if we don't sleep for 24 hours, our blood level, our response, the way how we respond is equivalent to having alcohol of 0.1%. Now, in Jamaica, the law states that we should have no more than 0.8% of alcohol in our blood. So it means, therefore, that sleep can push us over the edge. So one of the things that I want us to be clear about this evening is what is the difference between sleep deprivation and your sleep. Next slide. What is the difference between sleep deprivation and insomnia? And that says that the difference is that insomnia is an inability to fall asleep, whereas with sleep deprivation, you deny yourself sleep, maybe because of your need to be on social media, or you need to get the work done, or you have an assignment, or the baby won't allow you to sleep, so that's sleep deprivation. But in the case of insomnia, the person really cannot fall asleep. And so, just a little introduction on the sleep. What is the sleep cycle? There are actually stages to sleep. So the first stage is what we call light sleep. That's about 5% of our sleep will be light sleep. And somebody will say to you they are a light sleeper. So if something passes by them, they jump up. But we really should only be in that light stage for about 5% of the time. And then you move into the deeper sleep, which is about 45% of the time that you are sleeping. And as you get older, you find that you enter this section of sleep more. Then the next stage is stage 3, and this is where the deepest sleep occurs, right? There is evidence that at this stage, it is the most important for the functions of the body. And persons who suffer from sleep deprivation, this stage, they will be most affected. And you also find that it's very hard. If you're trying to wake someone, you know, sometimes somebody trying to wake you and you feel like something holding down. They say, like, duppy on you. It's just the stage of the sleep that you are in. And then we move on to what we call the REM sleep, which is the rapid eye movements. And this is where we dream, and this is where the body goes into the repair, right? When you fall asleep, at this stage, it's usually about 25%. And at the end of this phase, you would start the cycle of sleep all over, which is usually between 90 to 20 minutes. Right? So sleep deprivation, we can say, has negative effects in multiple ways throughout our body. And this is one of the reasons why we should, try to get over that tendency to deprive ourselves of sleep for one reason or the other. So looking at the specific areas now, we said that it can affect the brain generally and so, but what happens with the heart and the circulatory system? Sleep deprivation can cause hypertension and high cholesterol. So sometimes we are on the medications and, the pharmacist says to you, but are you taking your medication? And or the physician will say to you, I'm not seeing the results that I need to see. And, you are saying to them, but I take it, that this may be one of the reasons. Check your sleep. And then you have metabolic processes that can be affected. And one of the conditions, which is very common amongst us, is your diabetes, your type 2 diabetes. So lack of sleep causes increased inflammation. And, diabetes is an inflammatory process. Then you have the immune system, and we see what is happening with this flu that is going around. I personally had it for about a month. It's almost as though you would go through phases. So when you felt like you were over it, and then you start sneezing, and you feel the throat all over, and you have a repeat. So the immune system needs sleep in order to function, as well as your nervous system, right? You feel more pain. Although pain is one of the conditions that cause you to have reduced sleep. Then we look at the brain. There is evidence that deprivation can play a role in the development of Alzheimer's. So we know that we have to take some action. And then we spoke about the mood changes, the depression and the anxiety, the anger, the frustration, the shortness that occurs with the lack of sleep. Now, I did mention about the eating more, the factor of obesity, and a study in in 2010 actually showed that when you monitored the teenagers, 240 adolescents were monitored, and they slept for less than 8 hours. And it showed, the next slide will show that they consumed more, 2% more calories the next day. So they ate more calories, and the calories were increased fat calories and from carbs. So it wasn't just calories, but calories from 2 areas that promoted obesity. So there is, Harvard School of Public Health said that there is a general connection between lack of sleep and obesity, with potential causing ranges from lack of exercise, right? Also, if you are up later, you do what? You feel peckish, right? So you go to the fridge. I have to tell myself that after 8 o'clock, my fridge door lock. Not all the time it works, but most of the times, you know, you have to literally say to yourself, you know, they have the 5-point rule. And who knows about the 5-point rule? No one? Okay, I'm going to give you a secret. So this 5-point rule says, if you want to do something good, so you want to get up in the morning and exercise, but the bed nice, and you know, all the body tired. So you count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up, out of the bed. No questions asked, right? But it works for the food too. So I go downstairs and I walk by my fridge and see me here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? You cannot do it. So that's the 5-point rule. Who is going to use that rule? Show me. No one? Yeah, man, it works. It works. It works. So let's look at this chart showing just a summary of the things sleep deprivation affects. So it affects the weight, it affects your driving, it affects your thoughts, how you view things, it increases the risk of chronic diseases. And so we may say, but sleep deprivation, nothing I can make up for it. But it accumulates. So over time, the effect is not what we want. And of course, the next slide tells us about the sex drive. Yes, it kills sex. Being too tired isn't just an excuse, it is a fact, right? Sleep specialists have said that deprived men and women, notice I keep stressing on the men, right? The men. Men who don't sleep enough, women as well, we have lower libidos. So you want to have a good aphrodisiac? What do? Get 9 hours of sleep. It works. It has been proven. And do you know that some persons, they are morning persons, right? So after a good night's rest, their libido is up. Some conditions, other conditions that I want to stress that can affect strokes. Lately, I've been hearing a number of younger persons who have had strokes, heart attacks, depression, anxiety, type 2 diabetes, obesity, vascular diseases, heart attacks. They all are affected. And then there are some drugs. We are pharmacists, so we must talk about the drugs, right? Drugs that I use for cold and allergies, especially those with the congestions. Some blood pressure medications, asthma medications. Anybody ever see a child after they get nebulized? They hyper, right? Some diabetic medications, memory meds. Those students who love to go and take to stay up, to study, and to help the memory, that can affect the sleep, mood and anxiety. It's being used to treat moods, but it can also affect your ability to sleep. Prostate medications, pain meds. especially those for the headache that may have the caffeine. Although one of my colleagues told me a while ago that they can have caffeine at any time. Anytime, it doesn't matter. I think when I was at college, when I was in university, that used to work, but it doesn't work for me anymore. Stimulants, drugs that I use to treat conditions such as the persons with the attention deficit hyperactivity and some corticosteroid medications also. So we heard so much about sleep. How do we prevent it? There are some ways, right? And one effective way, can we have the next slide, is to have a routine. Being consistent with sleep and have habits. So you should have a set bedtime. If you said your bedtime is 11 o'clock, at 5 to 11, you should be heading into bed or near bed. I did a mastery program, and one of the things you had to do was to be in bed for 9 p.m. Now, I closed at 7:30, and I remember that particular, it was a Saturday night, and in order for me to complete that mastery task, I literally did a beeline. So I closed the store, I ran home, I got in the shower, and I was into bed 5 minutes to 9 in order to get my points for that mastery. That's excessive, but we have to plan, right? We have to check your bedroom. Some persons have their desk in their bedrooms. No, take it out, right? The TV in the bedrooms. Some persons, the noise around them. So my daughter, she sleeps with something over her eyes, and she have this over the ears, and she looks like somebody from the moon when she's going to sleep. Darken the room, okay? Limit the time. Next thing is to limit the time you spend around bright lights. So this thing of the social media addiction is real, right? And if we do it close to bedtime, what happens? Remember the melatonin? The melatonin would not be produced, and so we will not have that calming effect in order for you to fall asleep. Avoid drinking alcohol, and this is another reason why you should not eat late at night. So that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 count down for me. You're not supposed to eat 3 hours before your bedtime, because you want to allow the body to be in a state ready for digestion in order to ensure that the body metabolizes properly. So 3 hours, if you're going to bed at 10 o'clock, it means, therefore, that your last meal should be at 7. Okay? Yeah? All right. Oh, if only we could do it. The next thing is exercise. How many of us, okay, I wanted to tell me the truth, okay? How many of us exercise 7 days a week? Oh, this is excellent. Excellent. 6 days a week. Very good. I'll take the 6 too. 5 days a week. Walking is fine as long as it is dedicated time. 5 days a week. Okay, hear what? I want those who have lifted their hands already to keep standing. Can I ask you to stand? Those who did 6, 5. Can I ask you to stand? Okay, excellent. 4 days a week. 3 days a week. 2 days a week. No day for the week. Sit down. Don't move. Can we get prizes for these persons, please? Give them a round of applause. Okay, so we saw those who were standing, and we'll get you some prizes. Especially this gentleman who did 6 days and the little girl who did 7 days. We want special prizes for them. Give them a round of applause. Exercise is very important for a number of reasons. As I said to you, it's not something we like to do. So use the countdown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do not open the fridge door. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, get out of bed. Okay? And there are medications that can be used, right, to help, but we do not want to get into the state of being dependent on the ones I'm talking about are the over-the-counter. So you can go to the pharmacy and you can get some melatonin and you can get some, you know, the ones, the allergy medications that we buy when we can't sleep. We do not want persons to be dependent on those. So the next slide shows a summary of some of the ways that we can help. Practice sleep hygiene, take a power nap, sleep an extra few hours when you can. If you can pay the JPS bill, keep on the AC a little bit longer. If not, don't try it. Talk to the healthcare professionals, avoid caffeine, and try to go to bed earlier. It says they're 8 o'clock, so that means we have a few minutes. So, okay, so the next thing is how can it be treated? So treatment depends on learning relaxing techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy, some of the things that I've been telling you, like, for example, that countdown, telling yourself, making plans, right? Some medications, and you can go to sleep specialists to assist in having a properly structured sleep pattern. You can do breathing support systems, and for some persons where the problem is their difficulty breathing, they have things like sleep apnea and so. So getting help with the breathing would help. You can also use different types of pillows, make sure that your bed is properly, comfortable. Some persons like a hard mattress, some prefer a soft, but you need to get it properly thing. Now, for the medications, there's a slide which says that there are various medications that can be used. However, some medications can change the way we dream and it can affect us. And although they may be sleep-inducing, we must be careful of those. So there is a slide here that shows you the Ezekiel, which you can go to your pharmacy. My slide changer. You can go to your pharmacy and get something over the counter. But we're really not encouraging that. What we are encouraging you to do is to ask your pharmacist or your healthcare professional if these preventative measures are not working for you. So there are definite facts that although you may do all of these, some things are not treatable simply by any of these measures, and then you would have to get your help. So to summarize, sleep deprivation occurs when you do not get the sleep you need. Most adults need at least 7 hours of quality sleep. Sleep deprivation can cause daytime sleepiness, mood shifts, difficulty concentrating. Long-term deprivation can play a role in the development of many health problems, and you must address sleep deprivation by prioritizing your sleep. Your sleep is important, and let everyone know that it is so. The next slide shows my references, and I just want to say thank you. This is Pharmacy Week. Pharmacists, can I get that slide? Pharmacists, we are trusted, we are empowered, and we are united for action, including taking help to stop sleep deprivation. Thank you.
yes. Do you have any questions? Okay. Oh, doctor, yes. How could we forget that part? Thank you so much. So we'll take any questions that you have for Dr. Watson at this time. You can go ahead.
Use the mic. There's a mic.
Perhaps I should ask it this way. Can you break up your sleep hours? So for example, I'm able to take it to sleep for about 4 hours in the night, and then during the course of the day, I sleep another 3 or 4 hours.
Well, to answer, that is not optimum. Because what the body, remember the body is doing a lot of repair in the cycles. And we know that the cycles last between 90 minutes to 120 minutes. So we want the body to really go through the processes, the digestion, the metabolism, the liver. When we're moving around, some of the organs, they can't function properly. We also need to give the heart the rest, the brain the rest. So it is not optimum for us to break up our sleep like that. But of course, if we have no choice, then we would try to do it. But the best thing is to get the hours of sleep straight. No, you may wake up and you may find that for 10 or 15 minutes, you may be up. You just continue to try to fall asleep, do the relaxation therapy, the breathing. There's a breathing, I don't have the time, but there's a breathing method that you can use to go to sleep, right? So it is that you would breathe, take slow breaths, 20 slow breaths. And you do that 20 times, right? And you stop and you start again. That is going to put you to sleep. If you want to wake up, quick breaths. Because you're quickly feeding the brain, and that will wake you up.
Okay, thanks very much. My second question has to do with the elderly. So my mother, she's 83, but she doesn't sleep. She goes to bed late in the night. I was told that as the older you get, you sleep less.
Right.
That is really so? So she might end up having about 4 hours sleep in the night?
Well, 4 hours sleep ideally is still not sufficient for, as we saw, over 18, we want to get between 7 to 8 hours, right? So what you can probably do is to look at her environment. You know, is there noise? The bed comfortable? Is the room cool enough? Is she stressed about anything? You know, try to find out if there are any activities that may be affecting her ability to sleep. If, however, none of those, you can get a physician to help her, and it may be that she may need some medication to assist with the sleep.
Her issue is that she loves the television. So
so what you need to do, you need to take away the television. Don't let the television be in her room, right?
Thank you so much for your questions. Dr. Watson, we want to thank you for that excellent presentation. I am sure a lot of people are thinking that, what am I doing to myself, including myself, you know? Sleep and us, depriving ourselves of it, and now we can appreciate the importance of it. So I want to thank you, Dr. Watson, for taking the time out of, I know, a very busy schedule to really be here and share with us in this moment. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yes. All right, so now we will see if we really appreciate Dr. Ernestine Watson. Yes. So, to show our appreciation and whether or not we really, really, truly enjoyed the presentation and learning took place, I want to give away more things. I know she said there are 2 persons that we're considering now. So for the gentleman, I'm going to give him first preference to answer. So what he got was an first mover's advantage. So nobody else can raise the hand. If he gets this, he gets the prize. So sir, for adults, you're an adult, right? How many hours of sleep should you be getting? So you have the exercise down pat. How many hours of sleep should you be getting? 9 hours. Should we give it to him? All right, you can come, sir. Come and claim your prize. Now, for the other, anybody can answer. We'll take care of her afterwards. Trust me, we will. So, for the rest of us, I'm giving you an opportunity to participate. 2 questions to win a prize. What is the difference between insomnia and sleep deprivation? All right, let's take it. Let's take it. I know if you can project, speak a little loud because I know you have the baby, so you probably. Which one? No, you have to tell me which one. Yes. Don't use but the word deprived. Use one different word for me. Me tell you about these academics, you know. So one of them, you can't help yourself in terms of the insomnia. But the other one, you're making a decision not to sleep. So do you think she deserves the prize? All right. Okay, and then one of my other academics is telling me that life sometimes dictates that decision and we really don't have a choice. You agree with her, Dr. Watson? All right, so before we move into our next presenter, which I'm sure you're going to be learning a lot from as well, I'm just going to invite Vanessa Smith to do a little sponsor spotlight for one of our sponsors who unfortunately could not physically be here today. Vanessa?
All right. Good evening again, everyone. Everybody knows the Cetamol, the DPH, and Vigaton. Is that right? Yes. That these are some flag. Can you go back to the first slide, please? All right. So these are products from the Kirk FP division under the Caramed Group Limited. Right? Second slide. So just to highlight that some of the flagship products are Cetamol or DPH and Vigaton, which are trusted and known brands for over the years. Still on the market, you know, your Cetamol extra strength, your DPH elixir that people draw for when they have allergies or they want to sleep, right? And Dr. Watson just spoke about sleep deprivation. So hint, hint, Vigaton for those who need a little bit of energy and vitamins and minerals to keep them going. That is still on the market. Don't mind the artwork or the look of it. It has this muscle man on it. It just shows that it's going to give you strength. But both men and women can take it. Next slide. All right, so our Cetamol range of products, we have Cetamol migraine. You know, from time to time, persons might get a little migraine headache and they need something that's not too strong because you have prescription items. This is an over-the-counter medication. You can draw for it. It's in a purple packaging, comes as 20s and 51 by 2 sachets. You have a Cetamol extra strength for any pain. Everybody know dengue going around now. This is what you can take, the Cetamol extra strength, all right? For those women who are still in that period where they have their menstrual cycle, they can take the Cetamol menstrual for any bloating and pain associated with that time of the month. Still around. We also have our multi-symptom range of products, such as our Cetamol multi-symptom daytime, or Cetamol multi-symptom nighttime caplets. We also have our Cetamol cold and flu daytime caplets and our Cetamol cold and flu nighttime caplets. Now, the ones in the red box are the ones that you take at night. That's the one that has that active ingredient that will make you sleepy or drowsy, right? Not saying that you must just take it when you want to sleep, no. But if you are experiencing any cold and flu symptoms, and you want to get a good night's rest, then those are the ones you would go for. Now, the ones that you can take during the day when you're up and about and you have to work, you have to drive and so forth, you want to ensure that you're not falling asleep, then those in the green packaging, which are the daytime formulations, are the ones you want to take. So you'll still be able to function, right? Next slide, please. All right, we also have our children's Cetamol range of products. You know, our little ones, they're teething, the infants, they're having fever, pain. We have our children's Cetamol liquid, comes in the pink packaging. We have the infant drops for the babies, the smaller ones, and then we have for the older ones, the children's Cetamol liquid. We also have a daytime and a nighttime formulation. So when you want to put the little ones to sleep, they're fussing, they're having a cold, and you know those symptoms associated with the flu, you can give them the one in the red box. When they're still having those symptoms, but it's in the day, and you still want them to function, they have to go to school and so forth, then you can give them the one in the green box. Next slide. We also have our DPH portfolio, which consists of a DPH elixir. That's the one I was referring to when you want to get a little extra sleep, you know. You can take that one in the blue box. The DPH expectorant is for those who, when you cough, it feel like you have or sound like you have something on your chest and you want to get it off. You can take that one. You have the DPH cough and cold now when you're coughing, and you also have that congestion on the chest. You can take that red one. We recently changed the look and feel of our DPH decongestant. It's now renamed DPH Sinus, and more persons can identify with that because a lot of us in this population, especially now, will be having allergy issues and sinus issues, a lot of congestion. So the one in the pink box is what you can take. Next slide. And also, before I move on, just to note that all of those DPH products that I mentioned, we also have it in the children's formulation as well. We have vitamins like the Vigaton that I mentioned earlier. We have our HemoFed capsules, or HemoFed syrup, HemoFed pediatric drops for those babies and smaller children, toddlers that need an iron and vitamin supplement. Then the HemoFed pediatric drops is available. We have our Tropivite multivitamin drops for those who need some multivitamin supplements. And we also have our Enovite tonic, right, available. We also do teas from the Kendall line of products. We have the ginger with sugar, the unsweetened one without sugar. We have the one with ginger and mint, that is with honey, and we have the ginger with honey. So these are available, right, at supermarkets across the island. So you can feel free, and we actually have some outside. So you can, if you want a cup of ginger tea, you can go on the outside and make yourself a cup of tea. All right? So I think that's that. And we'll be asking some questions now, just to see if you've been listening. Mel, you want to ask? Sure.
All right, I'm the quiz master, right? So let us see if we paid any attention, because without sponsorship, we can't do these programs. So when we're doing a sponsor spotlight, we have to pay attention to what's happening. So for the questions, what is the most recent DPH product launch, and which product is it replacing? Oh dear. You saw her first? Okay, so she said which one? Is replacing what? Okay, I didn't hear the first part. All right. Which painkiller should I take if I suspect I have dengue? You have to continue to win the prize in a 3 question up there. Don't get comfortable. Wait, let us give her one little day. So which one do we get? So dengue is going around. Come on, this is over the counter now. What do you take? The which one? The Cetamol? I did extra strength? Okay, good. What are the 3 Kendall teas that are... Name me 3 Kendall teas. All right, then you can give her one of the baskets from Kendall. Yes. Awesome. We're moving right along. It means learning is taking place. I'm happy. So, our next speaker, as I promised, she will be delivering on the topic healthy eating on a budget. I think that is quite timely. I mean, when I go, there is this meme on the internet, I'm not sure how many persons saw it, with this lady. It's an American, of course, at the cashier counter, and every time she scans something, it's as if she's having a heart failure. Like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, these are the bills that we're being faced with, so I think it's quite timely that we look at some healthy habits that we can, of course, have, and put in a budget to that, to say that if we have to shop on a budget, which is all of, well, let me speak, they always say, speak for yourself. So I have to do these things on a budget, so it means that, you know, she will help us and support us in that area. So a little bit about Miss Lisa Reed. She is currently the program director in the Master of Science in Public Health Administration at the University of Technology, specifically in the School of Allied and Health and Wellness. She is a Caribbean certified diabetes educator, so I tell you, you know, it's pure influential people we have, you know. She's a registered pharmacist by profession, and she also has her master's in public health nutrition. So Lisa is highly motivated. She is a qualified speaker to come and speak to us on the topic. So, Ms. Reed, we welcome you to the podium. Thank you so much for coming. Let us give her a better welcome. In our evening, but come on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin. And I know, you see, Dr. Watson has set up the audience, you know, to go to them bed early tonight. So, I will not be keeping you very long, don't worry. I'm keeping all her points in mind, and I know that you are going to be very intentional about going to bed early tonight and putting to practice, starting the practice of, you know, getting that sleep starting tonight. So don't you worry. So it is a pleasure to have this discussion with you. I was asked to talk a little bit on eating healthy on a budget. Now, the first thing I want to start off by saying is that as pharmacists, contrary to popular belief, we are very, very interested. We're not only interested in filling your prescriptions every month, right? You heard Mr. Anderson before said that the NHF is deeply invested in making sure that the population is healthy by providing access to medications. As pharmacists, we are deeply invested in your wellness, total wellness. We don't want you to be on 14 medications, right? We want to help you to prevent disease. We want to help you to prevent complications of diseases that you may already have. And so this topic is in alignment with that. So are you ready to hear? Wonderful. So the first thing is we have to understand what is really meant by healthy eating. It's a term that we throw around very often, right? And these days, everywhere you go, the first thing when you talk about eating healthy, people respond and say, boy, the price of everything just gone up. Eating healthy not possible at all, right? Who in the room feels like that? All right, so we're going to explore all of the options, and by the end of the presentation, I want you to tell me if you still have that perception. Now, what is healthy eating? When we think about healthy eating, it is simply eating in a balanced way that helps to improve our total health and wellness, or helps to support our health and wellness, right? And balanced, when we think about balanced, we want to be able to get foods at each of our meals from the three main food groups. Anybody in the room know what the three main food groups are? I see this beautiful lady in the white trying to remember them. Tell me them, man. I want to hear them. Carbohydrates. Like what? Like your rice, like your flour, the starches. Yes, and I see that bright young lady in the back putting up her hand. Yes? I can't hear you. Your legumes, right, which would still come Some of them, they still have a little bit of starch, so they kind of cross over into the two groups, right? The starches and the proteins. Then we have the proteins, yes? Chicken. You can know him love him chicken, you know. And we have things like fish, and then we have plant-based proteins too, right? Or beans and so on. And then we have our fats, right? And a lot of our fats, examples of fats, you know, like our coconut oil, avocado, what we call pear, and, you know, that is in season now. So we want to be able to get foods from each of those main food groups. Our starches, our proteins, and our fats. Now, it is important, as Dr. Benjamin mentioned, for us to budget for eating healthy. Because if you don't prepare a plan for spending on your food, you're going to do one of two things. It's either you're going to buy pure foolishness, or you're going to overspend, right? And then you won't be able to necessarily meet your other obligations. And over the long term, if you continue to neglect yourself of the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, and the healthy foods, then you're going to put yourself at increased risk for developing one of the main, what we call chronic diseases that affect so many Jamaicans. In 2015, it was said that 7 out of every 10 Jamaicans that died from one of the 4 main chronic diseases: cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, of which hypertension is one of the main things, high blood pressure, and also lung disease, right? So those are the 4 main killers in Jamaica. Can you imagine, just look around the room, that every 7 out of 10 persons in the room could potentially be at risk for one of these diseases? What is even more shocking is that each of these diseases can actually be prevented through eating healthy. They are preventable. And so that is why we're having the discussion this evening about eating healthy on a budget. So let us get into it. One of the first things we have to do is we have to plan what it is that we're going to eat. I know, especially for us who live in the city, especially if you work outside of the home, which in this day and age, many persons do, right? It is very difficult for us to plan. So what we do, we get ready, we hustle and bustle in the traffic, and then we get to work, and then we think about what we're going to eat. And most times it's what is either advertised on the television or what we see on a billboard when we're driving to go to work. And we say, oh, you know, so I feel like some would eat some K. Anybody want to finish that one for me? Some K, right? Because we saw it advertised. We never planned to spend that money, you know. But just because it has now entered our mind, we're going to spend that money to buy it. When if we had made a plan about what we were going to spend and how we were going to spend it, we would be in a much better place. Now, just the other day, a friend of mine and we were reflecting on, you know, when I was growing up, we would see the matriarchs of the households in our community. They have certain days for certain things. So on a Sunday, you know, it's Sunday pot. Monday is Sunday Monday. Tuesday, we're having some bean something or some vegetable meal, right? Either callaloo or cabbage cut up with saltfish or something. On a Wednesday, you have something else. On a Thursday, you probably do soup. If you're not a Saturday, if you don't do soup on a Saturday. On a Friday, you know, you go down to the little jerk man and you buy your jerk chicken at your festival. And every day was well planned. And what I'm saying to us is that sometimes we have to go back to some of those things because they not only help us to eat healthy, but they also help us to spend within our means. Everybody with me so far? So that's number one. We have to make a plan. Now, when you go to shop, who here carries a list? Or you just walk down the aisle and you say, oh, I need some ketchup. And yes, me need some mustard. And, me think me should have buy some drumstick. Do you carry a list? I hear one yes. All right, and for those who carry the list, do you stick to the list? I see Dr. Langley said no. Right? So when you plan what you're going to eat at every meal, right? Take a little time. Initially, when you're just starting, it may take a little while to get into the groove of things, but once you get into the habit, it will become easier and easier. So you make your plan, and then from your plan, you make a list, and you walk with that list, and you stick to that list. All right? Your tummy can only hold so much food at any one time. So if you did plan to buy fish, and you see turkey, say next time for you, turkey. I'll put you on the next list, right? So make the list and stick to that list. Now, when it comes on to non-perishable items, your tin food, your corned beef, your mackerel, and all of those have their protein sources, good protein sources, and they also have some amount of healthy fat, depending on the kind of oil that they're preserved in and so on, right? Those things, if at all possible, buy them in bulk, because when you buy them in bulk, of course, you benefit from cost savings, right? You get bulk prices. Now, the other thing is that sometimes, too, you have to take some time to shop around, because sometimes in your head, you think that Mass Joe is really affordable. Mass Joe may be affordable, but for some items, right? So sometimes you have to take some time periodically to do some price comparison to see where you can get the best deals or the best value for your money, right? So look at where you're shopping. Is it that you go to the supermarket when there's a wholesale that you could go to and get a better deal? Can you go to the market, or maybe team up with your neighbor who goes to the market every week and say, you're going downtown, all right, this is my list. Just pick up these things for me and you give them the money so that it stretches some more. Because, of course, when it goes from farmer to vendor, it is usually more affordable than if it goes from the farmer to the supermarkets or the other commercial places that sell the food, right? So look at where you are purchasing the food and try to make sure that you're getting the best deal for your money. Now, see me? I buy things in season. So you see, if I love pineapple, and I see the pineapple, but it's not in season, usually the price is much higher, right? So I don't buy the pineapple at that point in time. I may buy the star apple or the OTET apple. So you try to look for the things that are in season, because once it is in season, you know that you have an abundance of these things, which usually drives down the price. Huh? It's not always, and sometimes the vendors do really capitalize on it, but you make sure that you scope out the prices and then you make an informed decision, right? Again, you have to go back to looking at where you can get the best value for money in terms of the place and in terms of the food option. All right? Now, it is usually cheaper or more affordable to eat what you cook at home, not true? Versus eating out. So when I used to have this trainer, and he used to say to me, listen, people, when you're on my training program, if you don't take nothing else, you don't make hungry catch on a careless road. What does that mean? You plan what you're going to eat and you take it from home, right? Because inevitably, when you eat outside of the home, you're going to spend more. And let's face it, sometimes the quality of what you're eating is not very good. All right? Reused oil, stale oil, dressed in seasoning so it smells so nice. The quality is not as good as if you had prepared it at home. Now, think, do you have any former classmates, any relatives in the country that have land space, they farm, could you ask them to support you with food items? Could you send to the country? And I know you're thinking in your mind, it's probably more expensive to, get it from the country to me anyway. But you have Knutsford. Knutsford carry food items. Them carry no food items for me. Right? And so if you have persons in the rural parts that have access to foods from whether it be community gardens or from their own trees, people of country love plant, right? Then you can ask them to send up whatever they have in season, right? That is a way, that is one sure way to get the healthy foods that you need on a budget, all right? Now, I cannot talk about eating on a budget without touching the point of food waste. We waste a lot of food. We waste a lot of food. Part of it is because we buy food at home with the intention of preparing it or eating it, and then we still go buy food. And it ends up in the garbage. Now, one of the things we have to learn to do in order to get the value for our money is to preserve our leftovers or preserve the perishables. So what are some ways we can preserve our fruits and our vegetables? Freeze them. You freeze our tomato, right? You can freeze bread. Once you put it on the counter and it comes back to room temperature, it's bread again and it don't taste no different. So find ways to preserve your foods, right? So that you don't end up wasting them, because that is literally money in the garbage. All right? Now, Dr. Watson talked about sleep deprivation. And I'm going to tie an interesting point here. Eating healthy on a budget also requires that you manage other areas of your life, including sleep. Now, how many of us knew that when you don't sleep well or you don't sleep enough, it actually can increase the amount of food that you eat? Yes, it affects your appetite. And so you would normally spend $10,000 just putting a figure out there for food. All of a sudden, you're spending $15,000 and $20,000 because you're eating more, because your body is more stressed, it's craving more. And so you are busting your budget and probably more likely not to eat healthy foods. You eat a lot of junk food, right? So we cannot separate eating healthy on a budget from our other life areas, including sleeping well, managing our stress, managing chronic diseases like diabetes, which again can also affect our appetite, right? So we have to learn to manage those areas, right? And so in closing, sometimes we as pharmacists, we meet individuals who are unable to meet their healthy food costs, particularly because of medication. And so if you are someone you know is not able to eat healthy on a budget because medicines are costing you a lot, then guess what? You can speak to your pharmacist, right? Because we have options that could lower your medication bills so that you can have more to spend on food and spend on healthy food. So you want to have that conversation with your pharmacist so that we can guide you and so that we can help you. Fair enough? So the bottom line is that food costs, let's just face it, food costs are rising, and I don't think that the prices will reverse, not in our lifetime, right, or beyond. They will continue to rise. And so we have to really make a decision to ensure that our bodies are getting the proper foods that it needs to thrive and to be healthy, right? We have to become intentional about that. It's not going to happen by chance. We have to make sure that we put a plan together, we know exactly what we're going to eat week by week, and that we put aside the money. Now, anybody knows about how much of your income you should reserve for food? That's it, Dr. Lagby said.
What does that mean, Dr. Langley? Zero. How much of your earnings should you spend on food? Huh? Okay, so I hear 5%. Any other figures? I know 5%. 5% can't feed me. Huh? All right, so globally, they said 10 to 15%. But with the rate at which these food prices are rising, it looks more like 20 to 30%. Now, if you're the only person in the house. Now, if you have dependents, if you have children, or if you have other adults in the house, especially if they have special nutritional needs, that price can significantly increase, which makes it all the more important for us to make sure that we practice these things. We plan out how we're going to feed ourselves and our household. We make our list and we stick to that list. We try to prepare in bulk as much as we can. So you have to budget time too, to prepare the food. And you buy in bulk as much as you can. You seek the support. So if Mas Joe plants cucumbers and Miss Mary plants carrots, maybe you can work out a system with them so that you can get it at a more affordable cost. You look at where you are shopping so that you get the best value for money. If you're buying branded products, you don't necessarily have to go for the corned beef that starts with G. You can probably buy the one that starts with K, right? Or L, right? I see the videographer got up, right? But I'm just saying, look at the brands and try to get the best value for money. The bottom line is that eating healthy on a budget, despite the rising costs, it is still possible, right? So I want us to leave here tonight changing our mindset. Don't belabor the point that eating healthy is expensive. The prices will continue to rise. I want you to try to think of ways that you and your household can get the nutrition that you need within the budget that you have. And if all else fails, perhaps it is time to reevaluate how much you have available for food and to see if you can increase your earnings so that you have more available to spend on healthy food. With that, I thank you for listening. I promise you I wouldn't keep you long. Thank you so much.
We still think it's impossible to eat on a budget? Boy, you really convinced them. May have to go to supermarket together. All right, so you... Sure. Yes. No, man, I think this is one of the right persons to throw it out to. Because remember how we started by introducing her in a nutritionist. She lives here in Jamaica. She's in academic research, all sorts of fancy things. Trust me, and I know that Miss Reed is doing quite a lot in this space. As she said, one of the key takeaways, sometimes medications prevent persons from eating well. Speak to your pharmacist. There are different programs, including nutritional aspect, that pharmacists are equipped to support you with. And I do agree we need to be out there much more in the public space, giving advice in terms of meal preparations and so forth. So our next speaker, we will invite him before we go into question and answers because he has another engagement and he has been here with us for quite some time. So he's a dear friend of mine, Dr. Brian Kazara. He is a graduate of the great Campion College. Of course, he would have done his Bachelor of Science in Medicine at the University of the West Indies and is pending his Doctor of Medicine in Psychiatry currently. So we really welcome Dr. Kazara to share with us this afternoon. He's quite qualified and capable to speak to us on understanding mental health, mental wellness, because we see everything that is happening around us, and I believe that this topic is quite timely and is very valuable for us. And as I said, few in number, but we can be potent, we can spread the news. All right, so Dr. Kazara, please join me. Thanks.
Okay, good night, everyone. Truly a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Let me just adjust this. Okay, so... All right, great. So, I was quite happy to get the invitation to come here, and I actually didn't know who else was on the agenda, but it's quite a distinguished list, and actually people who I'm quite indebted to. Dr. Tyrone Smith, you know, your president, he actually was very gracious, and I invited him to give a talk to some of the students at Faculty of Medical Sciences a few years ago, and he was willing to, and it was a very inspirational talk, actually, about overcoming hardships. And of course, Dr. Watson, she taught me as a final year medical student, and then several years later, she agreed to speak at the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association's annual conference. So these are both persons who have helped me out, and I'm very glad to be in a position where hopefully I can assist them. So especially following Dr. Watson's timely advice, I'm going to try my best to be as succinct as possible, just discussing mental health challenges in Jamaica. All right, so this isn't rocket science. It's also not brain surgery. We're just going to take a little bit of both. So this is really all about brain science, but in a very simple way. All right, so the title of today's discussion is Understanding and Exploring Mental Health Challenges. So anytime you try to understand a topic, as you guys are likely aware, we usually have some key questions that we ask, and generally these questions are the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. So I'm going to just try and address all those questions quickly as we try and explore and understand mental health issues. And we're going to do it in this order. We're first going to look at the who, then we're going to look at the where, then we're going to look at the when, then the why, and then finally the what in regards to understanding mental health challenges. Okay, so for the who, very simple. Mental health challenges affect all of us, every single one of us. And it's funny because I feel like Dr. Watson and Ms. Reed kind of stole my thunder, because I was talking about, I'm going to talk about the fact that sleep disorders and eating disorders are also big parts of mental health challenges. And so really we see that mental health challenges are quite universal. They affect you and me as well. In terms of the when, well, they affect us all the time and at every stage of life. This may not necessarily be a crowded audience, but I'm quite happy to see some fairly broad representation. I'm seeing persons who appear to be under the age of 18, persons who appear perhaps to be under the age of 65, and then everyone in between. And so it's good to have persons from all different age categories, because truthfully, mental health affects us all across the lifespan. And then finally, where? All countries, certainly our country is affected, as Dr. Anderson, I should say Mr. Everton Anderson, highlighted, in all areas. It doesn't matter which walk of life you come from. It doesn't matter where on the social strata you exist. Mental health issues are quite relevant. Okay, so really the who, when, and where of this topic focuses on the fact that mental health issues and mental health challenges are universal. That's really what it's all about. That's what the who, when, and where of this topic addresses. But let's look at the why. In regards to why does it matter? Why does a talk like this have any kind of impact? And what do we hope to leave here with? So when we think about big issues in Jamaica, I'll just mention some big words that we see in the Glean all the time. Violence. Now, firstly, does everyone here know the most common form of violence in Jamaica? So I see someone do this. So, you know, you may think it's gun violence. It isn't. It's actually intimate partner violence, right? Believe it or not, or domestic violence as we call it. That's actually the most common. It comprises 80%. So as violent as we are as a nation, most of our violence is actually happening in our house. The gang violence and the guns, serious thing, of course, very important. But just to put that into perspective, and we know that intimate partner violence has many ties with mental health issues. Of course, intimate partner violence or domestic violence is often due to having poor coping mechanisms, not being able to deal with aggression and anger appropriately and in a productive way, due to interpersonal challenges that exist between husband, wife, etc. And in addition, we see a very strong correlation with substance abuse. If you are abusing substance, particularly alcohol, for instance, the chances of you being the offender of domestic violence and also being the victim of domestic violence increases significantly. And as we know, it's just a perpetual cycle, unfortunately, because children who witness domestic violence are also at increased risk of committing it themselves or being the victim of domestic violence when they become adults. Physical health. So we've spoken a lot about that today. Of course, I'm very happy that Ms. Reed once again stole my thunder, highlighting some of the common disorders that kill Jamaicans. So even if you look at something like stroke, for instance, the risk factors for stroke have a significant correlation with some of the mental health challenges. And we spent a lot of our time looking at sleep and how sleep affects weight. We know obesity is a huge issue in Jamaica. And of course, we know that cardiovascular disease like stroke affects it in a major way. So your risk of getting all these cardiovascular diseases, whether it be obesity, stroke, and cardiovascular issues at large, there's a very strong correlation with mental health issues. So much so that if you have depression, we know that your risk of getting something like obesity or diabetes is increased almost twofold in some samples. School performance, and that's why I'm happy that we have some people under the age of 18. Of course, you know, we're all life learners here, but certainly we know that for persons under the age of 18, mental health issues are a huge problem. And I say school performance, not just academic, because school is more than just the grades that we get, but it's also participation in activities and learning to be, you know, a productive member of society. Children with mental health issues like anxiety and depression that are extremely common in our population and others are associated with an increased risk for low performance academically, but also, and this is very significant, for what we call conduct problems in school. So typically this is what we call bad behaving picnic. So we know that generally speaking, and we see this in the child guidance clinic, when a child has behavioral issues that result in them going to the guidance counselor or someone like that, oftentimes they have what we call comorbid conditions as well, such as depression, for instance, or anxiety, very common. And then when we think of the very high rates of child abuse in Jamaica, it's not necessarily surprising to see where it comes from. So just important to understand that these major topics that we have to deal with all the time somewhat have their root in mental health issues. And we know that child behavioral issues have been particularly topical because when you put on TVG and CVM of late, we're seeing stories of severe violence being doled out by these very young children, and it bothers us because we know that, again, goes back to the violence. If it starts at that level, it's going to eventually go into adulthood as well. Occupational performance, that's also very strongly affected by mental health. I won't even go into that too much, but we just know that if we're not sleeping well, not eating well, or if we're very severely depressed or anxious, we just can't go about doing our job as well as we normally would. Family life is also hugely affected by mental health issues. Again, of course, we can talk about the fact that if you have issues with domestic violence or your physical health or your occupational performance, all that can cascade into issues with family life. So I won't even go any further. And then finally, well-being. That's the last thing I want to mention. Even if you feel like, okay, you are insulated from the issues of violence, maybe you live in a very safe community, even if your physical health is great, and you've done well in school, you're doing well at work, and your family life happens to be great, even if you have all of these things together, which is amazing, you may still have problems inside within you. You may still have issues of what we call well-being. It may be poor self-esteem. You may not just see yourself as a good person. These aren't things that we have to accept. These are things that we can move to actually correct. And in keeping with the theme that we've been discussing tonight, correction doesn't necessarily mean medication, though certainly it has its role, and I'm sure this audience appreciates that. But there are also non-pharmaceutical, non-medical interventions that matter quite a lot. All right, so that was us looking at the why and understanding and exploring mental health challenges is important. Let's go back to the who quickly, but this is a different type of who. This who is the World Health Organization, because they have a definition of mental health. And again, listen, I want everyone to appreciate so far we haven't really been talking about mental illness or mental disorders, right? Because as Mr. Anderson emphasized, being healthy is not just the absence of disease, right? So we need to be healthy. Even if you don't have a mental health issue, you may not have a mental health issue, that still doesn't mean that we can't work on your mental health, right? So let's look at the definition. So the World Health Organization tells us that mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, because everybody has stress. Can't escape that. Doesn't matter who you are. So good mental health is being able to deal with stress, right? I always tell my patients, my job isn't to try and put you in a state where you never experience stress, because I can't do that. But what I can do is try to help you deal with the stress when it comes. Also, they say it's a state of being able to realize your full abilities, to learn well and work well and contribute to your community. So when you think of that huge, like really holistic definition provided to us, you see how mental health really affects us in every stage of life, and not only affects us as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a society. Okay, so again, breaking it down, since people like to talk about mental illness, mental disorder, we're just going to spend a little bit of time on that. Every single mental illness can be broken down into 3 components. It doesn't matter what it is, 3 components: thoughts, feelings, behavior. I'll say it again: thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So if you're having a mental health challenge or mental health illness, it's due to a problem with either the way you're thinking, the emotions that you're feeling inside, or the behavior that you're manifesting. All right, so very quickly, because it's not the focus of my discussion, but I thought it would be important if we're going to have a complete discussion tonight. Let's just talk about some of the mental health disorders, right? So we have the really popular ones, the ones that affect like about 1/5 of the population or more: depression and anxiety. Now, depression and anxiety in isolation are just universal experiences. Everyone feels depressed at some point in time, and everyone feels anxious at a point in time. That doesn't mean you have an illness. That's perfectly normal. Some persons, if it's particularly persistent, or if it causes a large amount of distress, then it can go on to the stage of being called a disorder. But again, just emphasizing how ubiquitous it is, how widespread it is when we think about mental health challenges. Okay, so trauma and stressors in life. The big condition that people usually connect this with is PTSD. That's a big word, big flash word: post-traumatic stress disorder. Again, due to the very high levels of abuse and violence in this country, PTSD is actually probably underdiagnosed. It's probably underdiagnosed and underappreciated. It's a lot more common than you guys would think, and I can tell you from first-hand experience that we diagnose children with it at very young stages of life, right? Okay, so we also have on this slide feeding and eating disorders and sleep disorders. I don't even think I need to talk on that because our presenters did a very good job emphasizing those areas. Another area that was discussed already, but I'll mention again, issues of sexual dysfunction, believe it or not. These also fall into the category of mental health illness. A lot of people ask why, but if you think about it, sex drive begins here, not anywhere else. It's right up here, and various other issues associated with sexual dysfunction. I'll leave that for now. Big one that we're all familiar with: substance use issues. And also one that's kind of in vogue now, and lots of people make reference to it: personality disorders. With catch terms like narcissistic. That one in particular is very popular nowadays. People usually often using it to describe like an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend. They'll say this person is extremely narcissistic. And in fact, that might be true. There may be some narcissistic traits, but thankfully only a very small percentage of the population has the full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And then, of course, going back to our children, we talked about the fact that a lot of children in Jamaica may have behavioral issues secondary to some psychiatric issues, but also important, and I think also underdiagnosed and not given enough attention, is that, of course, some of our children have specific neurodevelopmental disorders. Their brains may not necessarily develop the way that most persons do, and that may lead to specific learning disorders, things like ADHD, attention hyperactivity disorder, which really just means that they're not necessarily always able to learn the same way that you and I can learn. And I've seen many times parents be very harsh on their children who in fact just have these conditions, and I've seen where with appropriate intervention that does not always include medicine, I've seen significant improvements in academic ability. I've seen that across the board, right? But just to mention, and I just want to say this in case we have any parents here, who may have a child with ADHD or something like that, that, ADHD, and I always emphasize this to persons, yes, very strong correlation with poor academic performance if untreated, right? If untreated. However, one of my colleagues always thought he had ADHD. So, a doctor himself, he had already graduated. And I referred him to a colleague of mine. He got the diagnosis. So just to emphasize that ADHD can be diagnosed in adulthood. And currently, he's actually pursuing his master's education at Harvard in bioinformatics. So I always use that story as one of a few. He's not the first, but one of a few examples that even though ADHD makes our brain work differently, it doesn't mean that it's a limit or a ceiling on what we can achieve, right? The term we use nowadays is that it's neurodivergent, right? So it's really that your brain develops differently, right? So it's not necessarily that this is something that plagues you for the rest of your life and you can't go on to do good things. Okay, also finally, in a similar bracket, we've talked about conditions where the brain doesn't necessarily develop as it normally would, but we also have conditions where, unfortunately, with time, sometimes the brain can actually start to experience some significant impairment. So we're talking about neurocognitive disorders. The big one is, of course, dementia. Now, an important thing to mention, just to dispel a myth that a lot of people have, dementia is not a normal part of aging, right? It is a disease, it's not a normal part of aging. There is some degree of cognitive decline that all of us see as we age, every single one of us. However, in terms of the significant cognitive decline seen in dementia, that's not necessarily a norm, and it's an important thing that we need to be aware of, because also there are things that we can do to prevent it, such as getting good sleep and also having a good diet, right? So we see now all these themes playing, and also being very intentional about your health, because in Jamaica, based on the research that has been done at the University of the West Indies, persons with dementia have a very, very high comorbidity with things like hypertension and diabetes. So not only do these conditions literally kill us, they also unfortunately cause us not to age as well as we normally would. So the reason I was happy to talk about the disorders quickly is because if you think about it, guys, you don't need to have a mental illness, but almost anyone in this room, or challenge anyone in this room to put up their hand if they don't know someone or have been directly affected by issues such as depression, anxiety, experiencing something extremely traumatic, having eating problems, having sleeping problems, having sexual problems, have never used a substance more than they should have, or don't know someone who may have a child with some kind of early life development issues, or have a relative who may have age-related challenges. If anyone here can raise their hand, say they've never experienced that, or don't have anyone in their social sphere that's experienced that, then you deserve a prize, because you're in a very small minority. But the vast majority of us either directly experience some of these, or at least have a family member or close friend who has experienced these. So truthfully, it's universal, as I've said. And this goes back to why it is important that we explore and understand. Because once we appreciate that these huge, like these are massive things, imagine how much better our lives and Jamaica would be with less violence, with better physical health, if children were able to perform as well as they possibly could, if we were all of us here, able to work our jobs as well as we would love to. Like, imagine just how much better Jamaica would be, right? Now, mind you, I am not trying to say that this is entirely in the hands of mental health. There are structural issues that do this. We know that children from certain communities are more likely to do better than others. So there are broader kind of socio-structural issues, but I'm just saying that mental health has a role to play in all of these. And the good thing about mental health is that there are things we can do to improve mental health that might not necessarily be extremely expensive. So that's the last thing I'm going to talk about very quickly. So now that we understand the importance of mental health and we accept that it affects all of us in significant ways, things that we can all do very quickly, and it's just one word for each of these. I think it's about 5 words I'm going to give you. Empathy, that's the first thing. Doesn't cost a cent, right? It doesn't require any kind of technical training. If you see someone suffering, just taking the time to stop and say, I understand, or even just listening to them. You don't even have to say anything. You would be surprised. I honestly probably didn't appreciate until I started doing the training how impactful just listening is, but I can assure you can actually save lives that way. So empathy is the first big word, right? Second word, prevention. So I see Dr. Watson walking. I think Dr. Watson and Ms. Reed did a really good job of talking about some preventative measures we can take to ensure that our health is optimized. So I say this to say that if you know that you're moving on towards a stressful stage in the year, perhaps you're going towards a stage in the year where work is going to be amped up. You know, we have seasons, for some of us at least, where the work is going to be particularly bothersome, and then maybe have children that are doing exams around the same time. You can actually see that during this period of time, it may be more likely that I may have these, mental health challenges. So prevention is just one key way. Let's not wait until we actually have a mental illness. Let's try and prevent it. And the good thing about prevention is that community, family, those are really big ways. I always say that that's the first line of defense when it comes to mental health issues. Friends and family. Reach out to them. I really think they're underutilized in our society. Sometimes it may be beyond their capacity, and in that case, perhaps you can seek professional help, which is the other point I was going to make. Just don't be afraid of it or shy of professional help. It's a little bit more accessible than it used to be. Still have many accessibility issues, but if you feel like you have a mental health issue, you can go to a hospital or a health center, and of course the private options are there as well. Plan. So following on what Dr. Watson and Ms. Reed said about how we plan to sleep better, and we have to be intentional about how we budget for food, I'm also going to encourage everyone to be intentional about how they plan to optimize their mental health, right? So, you can actually think about, all right, when do I want to take vacation? Let's maximize my vacation time so that it can kind of balance off whatever mental health challenges I may or may not have. For instance, just coordinating things carefully with family members is a big thing. And just remember, as we've kind of appreciated, because mental health can affect all of us at any stage in life, if you can find a way to offset someone's problem in your family, you actually help their mental health and yours as well. So it can require a bit of foresight, it can require a bit of strategy, but it's certainly possible and worthwhile. And then I'm going to also mention prioritize. Please prioritize your mental health. Sometimes mental health gets like the lowest priority, but as you can see and appreciate, it actually affects all those other big things that we talked about. So it's important that you really put it as a number one thing. And the final thing I'm just going to mention, well, this isn't even a point really. It's just kind of to take everything home now. Now that we appreciate that mental health issues affect all of us, they affect children, the elderly, those of us who are working, etc. The reason why it's good for us on this topic to understand and explore is because there's a huge role that we can all play, right? Many times, believe it or not, when patients come to us, and I'm going to really emphasize the child guidance clinic in particular, it's because some concerned member of the community, some concerned member of the school, can be a guidance counselor, of course, has noted that there's something going on and this isn't normal, and perhaps we need to try and make sure that we pay some attention to it. So again, especially in particular, I really want to emphasize for our children, a lot of our children are dealing with depression and anxiety or learning disabilities, for instance, and a lot of times these things are going untreated. And I know it's cliche, but it's also true that children are the future. So by us being able to understand and explore mental health issues, I'm hopeful that we can try our best to see if we can intervene and influence it at that level before it gets out of hand or out of control. And also, finally, that every time we see something happening in our society, that, okay, yes, that police officer may have just killed himself and killed his wife, but just remember that that's not something that just happened that moment. It started somewhere else before. And oftentimes, there were many, many steps that could have been taken to prevent it. So when we prioritize our own mental health and look out for the mental health of others, we can avoid negative consequences, negative health events, and negative societal events. All right, thank you very much, guys.
Okay, I need to readjust. All right, so how are we feeling now? Are we good? We're ready for the next two presenters? All right, so we just really want to thank Dr. Kazara for his presentation. We really appreciate it, Dr. Kazara. As I sat there and I listened to you, I was saying to myself, you know, we have to find some way to get these conversations out more, because a lot of people can benefit. I mean, having a child in the prep school, primary school situation, you see the differences in personality. Sometimes we're seeing the differences at home as parents, as caregivers, as friends. Sometimes we really don't know what to do, or we take out our frustration, or we may criticize somebody else's child. So this is a conversation that I definitely want to bring in different spaces. So Dr. Kazara, I know that you're in a very intense period of your life, but we appreciate the talk that you gave us. And I'm sure persons will leave here, start to reconsider, perhaps share within their own household, share with a neighbor. But we thank you so much for your time and your efforts. Presentation was very simple, easy to receive, and we thoroughly appreciated it. So we're giving you this token, Dr. Kazara. This side, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Oh, he wants a shot, a picture. No, we get the ball. So I'm sure both Doctors Watson and Smith are very proud of you, Dr. Kazara, for that presentation, right? Very impressed. All right, so we still have a few little things that we want to give away. So I know we're a little few. I kind of feel a little lonely. Me love company. Can we just come a little closer so that I can hear the responses? Because we're wrapping up now. And we just want to ask a few little questions. And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. We are available to answer those questions. All right. So 2 presentations took place. We talk about healthy eating on a budget. So can anybody tell me one, just give me one example of how we can eat healthy on a budget? What can we do? Tell us a little, missy, I work for your price tonight, you know. Go ahead. Can somebody repeat that for me? Me need to carry go supermarket with me. I agree, so you make a plan. So what she's saying is that we plan, right? So Vanessa, she deserves the umbrella. Yes. So we're giving you a nice little prize from night you have been participating. Give me one other way that we can eat on a budget. Eat at home. How else? So look at the persons in the event. This lady. Who else? No, man. Miss Reed talk about plenty things, man. Come on. How can we eat healthy at home? I mean, eat healthy on a budget. No, man. We need somebody else to participate. Go ahead. I'm not hearing you. There's a mic there still? By within? The season, right. Miss Purple Blouse, Vanessa. And then this young lady will answer next.
I was saying that we can store our food in our refrigerator so we do not throw them away and we can use them to eat later.
I'm taking her home for Dimitri. Where is Dimitri? So give her one of the little young lady for the umbrella and her for one of the bags. All right, and then go ahead. I'm not hearing. Oh, you compare prices, you shop around so you get the better value for your buck. Okay, excellent. Now, How many of us, before Dr. Kazara presented, thought that, oh, I don't have, my mental health is perfect, I have no issue, or you know somebody who you feel that in terms of mental health, they are perfect. They don't need any further support, they're perfectly fine, no? Okay, so you had an informed audience, Dr. Kazara. No, but it's true, some of us don't take it into consideration. So he said that there were 3 components of mental illness. Now we had to really be paying attention to remember any of these. I'll give you a few hints. So they start with, one word start with T, one start with F, and one start with B. Those are some clues, you know, hints. No? All right, go ahead. Yes. Yes. Excellent. No, man, we should have more big prizes. Yes, that lady. So it was, I would say, an awesome, awesome evening. I liked the lineup of the topics. Let me see the hands of those who think that we need to repeat this and have the same set of presenters. Exactly. So you see, so my presenters are all motivated, so it looks like we're going to do it again, all right? So I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here. So before we close out, I'm going to invite Miss Vanessa Smith to give her vote of thanks, but just to be reminded of our theme and how we've started this evening. We say that pharmacists, trusted. You feel like you can trust us now? No, sir. Me not convinced. Do you think that for those of us who are here, do we feel like we can trust our pharmacists? Excellent. Do you feel that pharmacists makes you feel empowered, meaning that we give you education and we give you knowledge to make better decisions? Excellent. And of course, we're all united for action. We always say it, united we stand, divided we fall. So I thank you so much for your attention, and Miss Vanessa Smith will close us out with the vote of thanks. Afterwards, because I never saw her. Do you want me to do it now? Okay. Oh, somebody has a question. Go ahead.
Leftover food is healthy for you, or after left it over the next day, you put it in a microwave. Does it microwave healthy for you also?
Okay, Miss Reed? Bacterial. Okay, excellent. And as I recognize Miss Reed coming back, I need to give her own thank you. Miss Reed, can you join me, please? Miss Reed? So I know the gentleman waited on our return for that question, you know. So we just want to thank you so much, Miss Lisa Reed, for your presentation. It was well received. I'm not sure if you came in when they were all answering the questions. So we thank you so much. Come on this side, please. So we thank you so much for your effort and the time that you've taken out of your schedule to share with us this evening. We thoroughly appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
So Miss Vanessa Smith will come and close us out. Thank you so much.
Wow, wow, wow. What a power-packed session. I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedule, those that are in-house with us and those who have joined online. We thank you very much. I want to say a big shout-out to Bethel Baptist for allowing us to use their church as the venue. Give a big clap or a round of applause for Bethel Baptist. Big up the media team, Mr. Callum and your team. Big up. Just want to also say thank you to God, of course, for sparing our lives to, be able to attend this session and for allowing it to proceed as it did. Despite whatever little challenges and delays, we're still grateful. Grateful to the support of PSJ team members, the Pharmacy Week Planning Committee from PSJ. Just want to thank you all for the support. And just to say that we have so much more in store for you, the public and, at large. So stay tuned to our social media pages, right? On Instagram and on Facebook at Pharmaceutical Society Jamaica. Also want to give a big shout out to Power 106 for conducting our outside broadcast and for interviewing integral members of the healthcare team and, just the pharmaceutical industry, Mr. Everton Anderson, the CEO of NHF, our current president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Jamaica, Mr. Tyrone Smith, and our past president, Dr. Ernestine Watson. And I sure know they would have educated the public about PSJ and its impact and the role that pharmacists, the integral role that pharmacists plays within our society and at large. I want to give a big shout out to the sponsors, of course, from the Caramed Group Limited. We had Kendall teas outside for those who wanted warm beverages. We had Cetamol products and DPH products and our vitamins like Vigaton, on display. We had items such as the ferroglobin and other things that were displayed outside. So if you made your way out there, you would have seen some of the products that are distributed by Caramed Group Limited. We also want to give a big shout out to the representatives from the sponsors, for taking the time out to really be here to provide us with those lovely displays and for giving out whatever samples that they could. Want to give a big shout out to Mr. Everton Anderson, CEO of NHF, who would have given us some insight into NHF and what they're doing, the integral role that they're playing to ensure that medications are more accessible and affordable to our society. He also mentioned that NHF's team is committed to procuring these drugs, and sometimes it can take some long lead times to get those things, but they're committed to the well-being of the society at large. I want to thank our speakers such as Dr. Ernestine Watson, who is not only a lecturer, but a business owner, mother, a grandmother, and a wife. She wears so many hats, right, for taking time out of her busy schedule to be with us and to speak to us on sleep deprivation and its impact. It's so fitting, especially in today's society where we're so caught up with so many things and just trying to survive in this thing called life. It's a hectic on a lot of us, and sometimes we really don't pay attention to the amount of sleep that we're getting, and it has such a negative impact on our bodies, and not only our bodies physically, but our mental health as well. So, she shared with us, she spoke about the hormones such as melatonin, which puts us to sleep, and the cortisol, which wakes us up in the morning. She spoke about the hours of sleep that we need, from the newborns that need 14 to 17 hours a day to the adults once you're 18 and over that need at least 7 to 9 hours. And I'm so guilty. Sometimes I get only 4 hours. And I am so tired going to work, and the cycle continues, but I'm learning, and I've learned, and I'm going to try to put some of what she has discussed with us this evening into practice so that I can get slim and trim and, can function properly, mentally and otherwise in society. She also spoke about some of the symptoms of sleep deprivation, such as headache, fatigue, irritability, slowed response times, hand tremors, drooping eyelids. Boy, I'm guilty of the drooping eyelids, but I'm working on it, right? She said if we don't sleep for 24 hours, it is equivalent to having a blood alcohol level of what, 0.1%? Wow, that is 0.1%. 0.1%. Yes. Wow. I didn't even know that that was even possible. So I was really enlightened after that statement. So we just really need to pay attention to our sleeping patterns because it has deleterious effects on our bodies, right? We just want to thank Miss Lisa Reed for sharing with us about how we can eat healthy on a budget. Sometimes it seems so impossible because, as she mentioned, the food prices keep going up, increasing, and sometimes you go to the supermarket and you pick up a few things, and these are just basic things, and you're saying to yourself, why are my bills so high, So it's hard, or it might seem hard to eat healthy, but we have to try and, make a deliberate effort. It's for the betterment of our bodies, ourselves, our families, and the society at large. So she mentioned things like looking around for the best deals by shopping for what is in season. And I know that is very helpful because it will help to decrease the cost of those goods at that time. She told us how to preserve our foods in an effort not to waste them by freezing things such as tomatoes, even bread. Who knew you could freeze bread? Well, I learned something today. She said globally it said that about 10 to 20% of your salary should be budgeted for food. And, with the increase in prices, it seems like it's going to take at least 50% probably, but we have to learn to curtail it as best as possible. And we have to also educate our family members about the importance of, eating on a budget and also helping each other to do so. Dr. Brian Kazara, he spoke about understanding and exploring mental health, challenges, which is very critical in today's society. A lot of persons are experiencing issues, and we know that, we came out of COVID, post-COVID, a lot of persons were going through a lot. I mean, financially, emotionally, you name it. So he mentioned that there are three things that we can look at: the who, that it affects us all; when, it's all the time and at every stage, right? And where he said it's universal, so no one is really exempt from it, right? So we just need to bear that in mind and not stereotype anyone, because we all can fall victims to it. He mentioned domestic violence as one of the highest type of, violence or crime in Jamaica. Can you imagine? And that it can be due to mental issues associated with substance abuse and so forth. So we really need to pay attention to these things. And the information that you garnered here today, feel free to share it with other family members and friends. Don't just keep it to yourself, because these things can be life-changing. And he also mentioned that every single mental health issue can be broken down into 3 points: thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Wow. And he mentioned some of those disorders like depression and anxiety, the sleep disorders, which Dr. Watts went into, then the eating disorders and so forth, personality disorders. So we got a really wholesome discussion this evening. And so I just want to thank you all for spending the time to engage with us and to learn from what was presented, and I hope you put it into practice so that we can make ourselves and our society a better place. So thank you, one and all. Look out for our other activities, not only from PSJ, but other pharmacies across the island will be having activities. So tell your friends and family to be a part of whatever activities these different pharmacies will be having, all right? And look out for us next year again. We'll be doing it bigger and better. One love. Good night. You want to go to the mic? You can go to the mic.
So I'm sure those who were and still are in attendance would really like to thank the Pharmaceutical Society of Jamaica for coming here this evening. Personally, I have learned so much. I think your three presenters were awesome, and I am leaving here better than when I came. Thank you so very much, and I wish you all the very, very best for the rest of your events for this week. God bless. 95 years. Wish you 95 years more.
Thank you so much for your kind words. All right, Bethel Baptist, signing off.